Hello, I'm Kevin Ochsner. Welcome to a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, coming to you from Washington, D.C. It's a place where so much happens that can impact the U.S. cattle industry. We're coming to you from NCBA's Washington office, located just a short distance from Capitol Hill. We're going to talk to NCBA's D.C. staff, as well as some producer leaders, to get their thoughts on a wide range of important policy issues. So let's get started. Joining me now is Kevin Kester. He's the president-elect of NCBA. Kevin, we're nearing the end of 2017. What would you identify as some of the key policy wins of the past year?
Boy, I'm happy to say we actually have some good policy wins we can talk about. Waters of the United States is at the top of the list. We're just in the final phases, hopefully, of putting the nail in the coffin of that proposed disastrous rule, the Waters of the United States, WOTUS as we call it, to where it's going to go away as it was presented the last couple of years, and so that's good news. The second thing is we have trade access open to China for U.S. beef. So we think that's in the long term going to be a huge win for cattle ranchers across the nation once we get product moving into China. We just recently had our GIPSA proposed regulations formally withdrawn by the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, which we're very thankful for. That would have been a huge government intrusion into some of our marketing practices and probably created a lot of frivolous lawsuits against cattlemen and cattle producers across the country. So we got that rule withdrawn. And lastly, for our public lands folks, public lands BLM Planning 2.0 was taken back. So that would have been further government intrusion and local government control taken away from our public lands ranching families. And so we got that rule also off the table. So we're happy about those four big things.
Some great accomplishments, but I know you still have a full agenda. Tell us what else is still on the list.
Well, we have a lot of stuff that's on the list. So a tax reform package is hanging right now, and we're waiting to see what's going to happen with that. So our DC staff and our leadership is working really hard to communicate to our congressional leaders and the administration on what our priorities are for ranching families across this country for tax reform package things. So the death tax is at the top of the list, and there's a bunch of other things, interest rate deductions and like-kind exchanges and a host of other things that are popping up, capital gains. And so we're working really hard to make sure that we're not having any effects where it harms us and harms the things we do every day in business. And so that's one of the things. We have the Farm Bill that's going to be coming up in 2018, and so we have the research title that we're working hard on to get more research dollars for a whole host of important projects that we think needs to be done for the ranching industry. And also we want to make sure we keep intact the conservation title, things like the EQIP program, which a lot of ranchers across the country use. And then we're also proposing a FMD, foot and mouth disease vaccine bank. That's something new, and funding for 5 years for that. So those are the things, some of the things in the Farm Bill that we're working on.
A lot of domestic issues there, but we've also heard a lot about NAFTA recently. What's on the docket there with NCBA?
So the U.S. is right in the middle of a modernization negotiations for NAFTA between Mexico and Canada. And so it's important to us as cattle ranchers and producers that we don't become collateral damage on any renegotiations during this trade agreement talks. So we're working really hard with the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and administration to make sure that we don't get harmed, because we have zero tariffs and zero trade barriers to our U.S. beef into Mexico and China. Pretty hard to improve on that. So we're working real hard to make sure we don't get hurt. What we're calling collateral damage on that front.
It's critically important. You know, we talk a lot about legislative and policy issues, but I know NCBA works a great deal on the regulatory front. Give us an update there.
Well, there's a lot of things that we're always working on out of the dozens and dozens, but at top of mind right now is we've got to continue working on Waters of the United States, because we got almost rid of the rule that we were afraid it might have passed that would harm us. But now part of the Clean Water Act is it requires there to be a Waters of the United States rule of some kind. So we're working with the administration, and they're taking our suggestions so far on what we're going to operate under the Clean Water Act in the future. So that's something that's we're working on right now. We got the Antiquities Act. I know Ethan works really hard, our Public Lands Council staff person here in Washington, D.C., to try to rein in the abuses that prior administrations have done by including millions and millions of acres at all one swipe under the Antiquities Act, which harms cattle grazing and cattle operations on public lands, and it could be another nail in the coffin of putting our public lands families out of business. So things like that we're working on the regulatory front.
It's a big investment to have an office here in DC, including the very, very talented staff you have. Why is it so important for NCBA to have a presence here in our nation's capital?
I can't overstate how important it is to have an office here in DC for National Cattlemen, because each and every day while we're out working, and we say this message over and over again, but I just can't overstate it. While I'm out working, while our listeners are out working, trying to keep our families in business, ranching and farming, our staff is here protecting our backs on Capitol Hill each and every day, and with our administration and agencies that are up to no good a lot of times as we're out working and even while we're sleeping. So it's important to have a staff here full time to protect our interests each and every day.
So what would you tell our viewers in terms of how they can support NCBA's efforts here in Washington, D.C.?
There are a lot of things to do to support. The simplest thing, and it's really important, is be a member of NCBA. Write the check, no matter how much it is, whatever a person can feel that they can contribute, it's important. Every little bit counts to where we can keep our staff boots on the ground here in DC, keep us all in business. And then if a person at some point in their career can take the time to be involved at the local cattlemen's level, your state cattlemen, and even here with the national cattlemen, it's important to contribute whatever you can, but even a small check is very important.
Thank you so much for making the journey all the way from California. I'm guessing it's a trip you'll be making a lot more over the next year.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Now, if you'd like to support the work of NCBA in defending and advocating for the cattle industry in Washington, D.C., why not become an NCBA member? It's easy to do. Just call toll-free 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org.